You know, the EPA has been a corrupt organization that launders taxpayer money into the pockets of unelected bureaucrats. And I mean, you really want these guys looking after the planet? And that goes back to this endangerment finding, which really falsely pinned carbon dioxide from automobiles on all of the problems in our world, right? Think of what if we actually took that money, say that $20 billion that they tried to, put under the rug, right? What if that actually got put into projects on the ground level that really made a big difference instead of lining the pocketbooks of various bureaucrats? Or, hear me out, crazy idea, what if you just returned the money to the taxpayers? Because you're going to need that money to pay for all the, to offset the cost of how expensive cars have become because of these regulations.
From Olympic City and the home of Pikes Peak, this is the Automotive ADHD Show with Matt West.
Here we are, rocking it on the Automotive ADHD Show. You know, I have a massive rant planned for you. Yeah, I'm going full Jim Miller with a rant. That's going to be later in the show. I haven't been this fired up about something for a long time. And, have we finally made progress in defanging the EPA? Will they stop coming after motorsports? Yeah, we're going to discuss that. We're also going to discuss left lane hogs and wrap things up on my Hertz rental car saga. Did they arrest me? Did the AI scanners bill me $1 million for damage that I didn't create? We're going to get to all of that and more, and some of your car sounds on this edition of the show. By the way, I want to thank you for joining me here at my brand new airtime on my flagship station. We moved from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. And that was a very strategic move. And the reason for it was, well, there's a lot of reasons for it. I won't get into too much of it because it's kind of boring, but it's going to allow me to go to some car events that I've really been wanting to do. They're on my calendar, but I said, look, I'm not going to be live if I go to those events and I set up my tent and I do my show from there. We're going to pre-record it and it's not going to be live. And I really want it to be live. And that's just because of the timing of the events. And there's also some other factors in my personal life where this time works a little bit better for me. So we're going to do that. But I really have some fun stuff on the calendar for you. And I'll tell you more about it as we get into the month of August, as we get into September. There's going to be a lot of cool things that are on the back burner right now, and I'm really excited to bring those to you. So, of course, though, if you are tuning into this show for the first time at the brand new airtime, welcome into my show. I'm your host, Matt West. I am the resident gearhead on this radio station, and we talk all sorts of cars on this show, whether it's race cars, project cars, maybe it's just your daily driver. Maybe you're not a car guy and you just have something that you need to get to work and back. We get into all of that. We also interview various different people on the show. I haven't done a ton of interviews lately because I've been really booked out on things, but I got some great ones in the can as well. So all of that's coming up. All of that is possible thanks to this new airtime. And now you're saying, well, Matt, I really could only listen at 9 o'clock. This 2 o'clock thing's no good for me. And that's okay, because that's what the podcast is for. Yeah, this show happens on the internet as well. You can catch it wherever fine shows and mine are downloaded. And I mean, we're on Spotify, we're on YouTube, Facebook, all of these different places. And if you do watch online, give it a follow on Spotify, give it a rating. Even if you listen on the radio every weekend, go online, do me a favor, give it a rating on Spotify, 6 stars on there, and then go on YouTube and subscribe to the show. We are on the threshold of monetizing the show on YouTube. Yes, I know YouTube monetization is a few pennies? Actually, not even pennies, tenths of a penny, fractions of a cent. But every little bit goes into that project car. Goes into the show's budget right here so we can do more stuff for you. So, but yeah, I do want to thank you for joining me here at the brand new airtime. Now, we'll get into my discussion about the EPA. I have a feeling this is going to be a heated EPA discussion. Well, less of a discussion and more of me ranting. But before we do, I've talked at length on this show about the Dodge Charger Daytona EV and why I don't like it. You see, I really don't like it. I don't like it not because it's an EV. I have actually found some pleasurable things about EVs, some minor things that I do like about EVs. And one day I'll probably have an EV in my fleet. Is it going to replace the S2000? Is it going to replace the AE86? No, it's not. But I do want an EV in my fleet because there are certain cases where it would make sense to have one. Now, the thing that Dodge did that really rubs me the wrong way, grinds my gears, you could say, is it's an EV, but it makes fake engine noises. And you've heard about this. If you're at all into cars, you already know about this. And you're probably in agreement with me saying that, yes, the fake engine noises are stupid. Why would you want to rev an EV at a stoplight? There's nothing to rev. And they're like, well, it's amplified noises from the electric motor. Yeah, right. Give me a break. Because that electric motor is totally spinning and idling there at the stoplight. Yeah, it's nonsense. Nobody likes it. Muscle cars don't like it. And Dodge has to realize that their primary demographic now isn't just muscle car guys. It's not just retired dudes who want to have something that reminds them of the 1960s. It's maybe even the early 70s. We won't get too far into the 70s, but early 70s. And, sure, there's people who do that. Those are oftentimes your first-time buyers for things like, Charger and Challenger, Hellcats and things. But Dodge also has to realize that guys who do street takeovers, and we hate street takeovers on this show, but guys who do street takeovers, the classic thing you're going to see at a street takeover, I don't know, maybe a G35 Infinity, and it's going to be drifting and doing donuts in an intersection. It's going to be on cords. The bumper's going to be falling off. But you will also find a Dodge Charger, oftentimes a Hellcat, oftentimes a base model with a Hellcat badge on it. You'll find that as well. Oftentimes a Scat Pack that really isn't a Scat Pack, but, has some seat covers or something on it that say Scat Pack, right? Anyway, Dodge has to understand that is a demographic that does buy their cars. And you know what the street takeover guys don't want? You know what I hate to say it, this is the one time I'm going to lump in classic muscle fans and street takeover guys. Very different people. But you know what they both don't want? They don't want fake engine noises. Neither of them want it. In Dodge, that is your only demographic. Those two groups of people. There is no in between. So, but here's the thing with Dodge's fake EV noises. For as much as everyone hates them, Dodge is now, this comes by way, hat tip car and driver, Dodge is recalling 8,390 Dodge Charger Daytona EVs because they're not loud enough. I got to let that sink in for a second. I'll say it again. Dodge is recalling 8,390 Daytona EVs because they're not loud enough. Yes. Now, the problem is it's not the stupid fake EV noise that isn't loud enough. Apparently, that's actually decently loud. I mean, it's not going to be, like straight pipe loud, but it's decently loud for being some speakers that point on the outside of the car. No, this relates specifically to the legally mandated exterior sound. You know how EVs and even hybrids do this? You drive it at low speeds and it makes a little noise. It whirs. It sounds like a little Jetsons car. Maybe it makes some Star Trek noises, something like that. So people know what is coming. You're walking in a parking lot and this thing's creeping up behind you. You wouldn't really hear it. Yeah, you might hear the tires rolling, but even at a really low speed, you're not going to hear it very well. And this is, it's mandated that these cars make a little bit of noise, some sort of whirring, something that, again, pedestrians can know and understand is a car. Now, the fault that I have with that, I will say, is, and it's happened to me, actually walking in a parking lot, and there's other traffic sounds happening and the EV comes up behind me and I hear some whirring. That's my impression on the radio. I hear something like that. And my brain doesn't go, oh, there's a car, I better get out of the way. My brain goes, what's that noise? I don't know what that noise is. It doesn't, right, we know what a car sounds like, but it doesn't. And because every manufacturer has slightly different whirring EV noises, it doesn't always connect for me. Like, even for me, maybe it's happened to you, but this has been something where my brain hasn't immediately registered, get out of the way, there's a car coming. Instead, I'm like, what is that? Oh, I'm about to be ran over by a Toyota hybrid or something. Heaven forbid it's a Tesla. I wouldn't want to get run over by a Cybertruck. That would not be very pleasant. I mean, you can get like a paper cut just looking at that thing. I definitely don't want to get hit by it. But anyway, so Dodge has to recall a bunch of these Chargers, and they have to update the software. They have to fix them so they actually make some noise. Imagine that, the EV muscle car that everyone hates because it makes fake noises isn't loud enough. Hey, we're talking the EPA. Some really interesting news came up, and I want to tell you about it coming up here after the break. Don't go anywhere.
I mean, most Americans, we care about the environment. We want clean air, land, and water. Conservatives love the environment. We want to be good stewards of the environment. There are people who then, in the name of climate change, are willing to bankrupt the country. Yep. In the name of environmental justice, they will get tens of billions of dollars appropriated to their friends rather than actually remediating environmental issues. So they created this endangerment finding, and then they're able to put all these regulations on vehicles, on airplanes, on stationary sources to basically regulate out of existence, in many cases, a lot of forms of segments of our economy. And it costs Americans a lot of money. What's the significance? How big is the endangerment finding? Well, repealing it will be the largest deregulatory action in the history of America.
This is Automotive ADHD with Matt West.
That was EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin on the Ruthless podcast, talking about the endangerment finding, talking about repealing it, and we are going to discuss why that is such a big deal, how it's going to affect you and me. Maybe you're a car guy like me, you're an enthusiast like me, it's going to affect us. Maybe you're just a dude who has to get to work and back with his car. Maybe you got to take your kids to school in the minivan. Right? It's going to affect all of us. And actually, the scope of it's far outside of the automotive sector. And we're really going to narrow in specifically on that automotive aspect here. But to understand why it is important that the finding has been repealed, the endangerment finding as it's called, we have to understand really what is the endangerment finding. Now, the endangerment finding is essentially... Well, it dates back to the Obama administration, 2009, and it came about, actually went into effect, I believe, in 2010. And what it is a consensus, you could say, saying that we believe that as a government, that these various scientific studies and factors show that carbon dioxide, in addition to a few other things, is harmful to human life. And therefore, as the EPA, we must regulate it and protect the universe with it. And you can already tell some of my sarcasm in there because I'll get into what I think about this. But it declared things like carbon dioxide pose threats to public health. And, and before we even dive into that, I'll point out the fact here that you are breathing out carbon dioxide. And some people are probably saying that I breathe out a little too much carbon dioxide, but hey, it is what it is. And the thing is, humans, we inhale oxygen and we exhale carbon dioxide. Trees, meanwhile, inhale carbon dioxide and exhale oxygen. There's a nice symbiotic relationship going on there, right? And carbon dioxide itself is not hazardous to your health, because if it was, we'd all be dead. We're breathing it right now. I'm going to breathe on the microphone. That's probably not good radio etiquette to do that, but here, I'll do it again. See, there, you'd be dead. No, but the thing is, they tied carbon dioxide into a number of factors that related to so-called global climate change. And why is that being challenged now? Well, firstly, it is the basis of all of these regulations that have happened with the EPA since 2009. It is the fundamental groundwork in which these regulations were allowed to happen. And that is a big deal to repeal that. Now, Lee Zeldin's EPA now says that there is new scientific data which challenges a lot of assumptions within that 2009 endangerment finding. So they say there's new scientific data, for one, that shows a lot of this isn't true. Lee Zeldin himself even talked about how when the EPA looked at this scientific data, they combined carbon dioxide with a bunch of other stuff, mixing these different gases to determine its effect. And then they just narrowed down on carbon dioxide being the one problem out of everything. And by doing that, they then singled out things like cars. Our cars also emit carbon dioxide. That also happens. And they really disproportionately attacked the automobile industry with this data. And I would agree with Lee Zeldin and the new findings that that's not a very scientific way to do things, that the science, isn't, people say the science is correct. Follow the science. Well, you have a lot of assumptions that that science is being done in a certain way and interpreted in a certain way. And also you have to remember who funds that science. That's a big thing to remember. Science isn't cheap. It costs money. Scientists have they say, we think of a scientist as someone who's unbiased, but keep in mind, they have various economic reasons to do their research to keep themselves funded so that they can continue to live and do what they do. And it's not necessarily as unbiased as I think a lot of us think. Now, the EPA has said that the way that the endangerment finding was figured out was flawed, that it had flawed procedures in it. And we just assumed that everything was a certain way, that everything was correct, and then based it all on top of it. Again, this is the foundation which everything that they do now is based off of. There are also a few other reasons to repeal that endangerment finding. One of which, by the way, is just authority. The EPA has limited authority, and there are various legal precedents which pointed out the fact that the EPA was basically overstepping what they could do legally. I mean, remember this. Congress creates laws. The EPA does not create laws. They don't. And we'll touch more on that here in a little bit. But they leaned on some various Supreme Court rulings and some other things that really just, again, show that the EPA's actions were overextensions of the power, of the authority that it has. And, there's also an argument that the, regulating cars is a small portion of all of the things, all of the, whether it's carbon dioxide, whether it's other gases, whether it's whatever, right? That is emitted into the atmosphere by man-made means. There is so much other stuff that does that isn't just cars. The EPA also talked about the EPA now, Lee Zeldin's EPA, argues that reducing greenhouse emissions from U.S. motor vehicles would have a completely negligible impact on overall atmospheric greenhouse gas levels because there's so many other sources of this. And so what do we have? We have this endangerment finding that we are now discovering that the EPA is claiming was built on some false pretenses. We have new information. We should change it. There's also, again, some legal precedent showing that it was overstepping its bounds. So where does that leave us now? And what that leaves us with is an EPA that's basically handing in authority. When has that ever happened? I mean, seriously, when has the EPA ever actually handed in authority? I can't think it's ever happened before. And, with the EPA doing this, there's a lot of things that I think are going to follow. Now, there's also a lot of criticism on this. In fact, if you do some research online and you look at it, you will find nothing but media criticism for this. And people are going to be saying that, that the world is going to burn, that, Lee Zeldin's literally going to destroy the planet. And I don't think that is going to be the case. So I don't think that's the case at all. And my take on this is just such a huge shift in mindset for the EPA. And, around the last time this year, I should say, around this time last year, I was making points that the EPA was overstepping its boundaries massively in prosecuting various performance parts companies, small businesses. We really got on this show and supported the RPM Act. In fact, you can still, in the description text, if you follow this show on the podcast on YouTube, you will find a link to SEMA in the description of every single show. Why? Because I believe in what SEMA is doing, and I believe how they're standing up for the automotive enthusiast and the grassroots, working man who has to drive his car, got to get in the truck, go to work, got to take the kids to school, the working family, right? SEMA is standing up for these people. We had the RPM Act a couple of years ago, and the RPM Act would have actually set a legal definition in what authority the EPA has to regulate things like aftermarket parts, for example, your race cars. They were even threatening to come after private property. You can't race your race car on a track. The race car is private property, my piece of metal. The racetrack is private property. Say you even own that racetrack. It's your own racetrack. My piece of metal on my piece of dirt. And they were going to come after that even. And they had this big thing where they were saying that, well, if a car was originally intended for street use, you could not convert it for race use and take the emissions equipment off of it, even if it's truly never going to be on the road again. They would say if you wanted a race car, you need a custom-built tube chassis, ground-up race car. You can't take a car and convert it from street use to race use. Ridiculous. They don't have the authority to do that. And they were going to prosecute people. And we think, okay, well, they were coming after big companies and, different businesses. Yeah, well, they were doing that at that point. What about you and me, the guy on the ground level? They were going to come for us eventually. They made those intentions clear. And again, they don't have the authority to do that. It would take an action of Congress to do that. And remember how this process works, right? Congress votes in the way that they believe is best, that best represents the interest of their constituents, right? And we elect the members of Congress. They vote on our behalf in a way that they think best represents our interests, what we want them to do. This sense of democratically elected representative government is key to our country, the way it works. And meanwhile, the EPA is just operated as a faceless entity with zero accountability. I mean, it's managed by bureaucrats who are not elected by the people. They do not have the interests of the people in mind. And I think that is unacceptable, right? That is absolutely unacceptable. This is the state the EPA has been in. I've talked about this for years still. You know this. I'm beating a dead horse here. And of course, like Lee Zeldin said at the beginning of the segment here in the clip I rolled, yeah, I want clean air. I want clean water. I want to make sure there's not toxic radioactive waste getting dumped into rivers. We want to make sure that companies aren't burning toxic trash in open burn pits, right? Those are real problems. They require solutions. But the EPA has been coming after the wrong guys for years. And that's you and me. And you might say, but Matt, it's really the automakers they've been targeting. It's the companies. Well, yeah. Who buys their cars? You and me. They don't buy their own cars. We pay increased prices. We deal with complicated and expensive maintenance on different emission systems. We pay as a part of that cost for that car. That pays for licensing, research and development, and all of this stuff so manufacturers can certify equipment which we already know works and already knows what the emissions on it are. And they have to do this all the time. There's so much bureaucratic red tape. Cars are more expensive than ever because of it. We're going to continue this discussion on the other side of the break. So don't go anywhere. You're listening to the Automotive ADHD Show, and we'll be right back. I love it. Landon's 6.0 Silverado now complete with that chop. That sweet, sweet chop, 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 chop. Oh, it's got a truck Norris cam now. Nice work, Landon. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Thanks for being patient. Landon got the Automotive ADHD care package with a bunch of goodies in there, and he's enjoying that right now. So, Landon, really, again, a big thank you to you for hanging tight, waiting for that stuff to come in. I'm glad that you have it now. Remember, you can send your car sounds into my show Facebook.com/automotive ADHD. Get them featured here on the show. Now, one of the things, we were into a heated discussion with the EPA, talking about the EPA, the changes that have happened now in the EPA versus where it was even a year ago. And that really big shift was the repeal of the Endangerment Finding, which was just the groundwork, the complete foundation for these various regulations. And I have more to say on this. I got to keep going here. But before I do, I want to tell you about Drift, Colorado. Yeah, I'm wearing the shirt today, and Automotive ADHD supports Drift, Colorado. I mean, we love our local racetracks. We love the people who put on events at our local racetracks. If you haven't been out to a Drift, Colorado event, you're missing out. I mean, my mother even likes going to drift events. In fact, she says the drift events are really exciting. And she's not the sort of person who you would typically think would go out to a drift event, and she really enjoys them. And look, it is the racing these days, grassroots racing, great grassroots motorsports. It's really a family thing. People get out there and they have a ton of fun. They have a ton of fun in a safe way. They get to have fun, enjoy cars. I've met some of the best, people talk about the car scene, and yeah, you have your, street takeover scene. That's the dark side. We don't like that. But the really good part of the scene is grassroots motorsports. My favorite part. And I just love, even myself, if I go to a local autocross event, do something like that. Whoever it is, you don't know who's going to show up. Going to be different people sometimes every weekend, but you can go walk up to anybody and have an awesome conversation about their car, the different things that they did, what ECU are they using for this, how did they tune their suspension, or you could just admire the car because it's cool. You don't have to know all of that stuff. It's such a welcoming crowd. So Drift Colorado's got a number of events going on, by the way, and if you do go to those events, grab yourself a Drift Colorado shirt, which has, I'll turn around here for the video viewers here. Look at that. Automotive ADHD show. Oh, and who's that? Jim Miller, just a guy, on the back of the shirt. So check it out. And really, while you're at these events, get a hot dog, get something at one of the food trucks. Support the people who support this. And yeah, you know what? It's a few bucks for a ticket. Get a drink, get a meal, get something while you're there. Support the vendors that are also at these events. It's this economy, and it all goes around and helps us protect motorsports. It's really good. By the way, let's see here. The next event coming up here, Round 2 Formula Drift Pro-Am. That's going to be at IMI, which is northern Colorado. That's August 16th and 17th. And then we've got the Drift Clinic, Round 4 DC Championship at PPIR, Pikes Peak International Raceway. That's my home track. I love going out there. That is September 6th and 7th. So check it out, driftcolorado.com. Support some grassroots motorsports. Now, my discussion on the EPA, we got to keep going here because, we were talking about how this really is a big move. All of the things the EPA has done in the past years have just been egregious. And I mean, they've been overstepping authority. They've been coming after motorsports enthusiasts, small businesses who support the enthusiast, people who, build speed parts for cars. And you say, well, I don't have a track car. Well, yeah, but did you buy a catback exhaust for your car? Might have been from that same company. They make their bread and butter on other stuff too. They make money on making race parts, and the EPA was coming after them for that. So, and this is going to change now. This is really going to be a flip. This is going to be a big flip when it comes to how the EPA is treating that. Now, bear in mind, the EPA up until Lee Zeldin's leadership was the same EPA. Man, they did some crazy stuff. Did you know they had $20 billion with a B dollars of extra money that they hadn't spent by the end of the Biden administration, and they just straight up dumped it into a bank account to hand out to various random NGOs who are managed by God knows who, probably friends of a friend, right? And if that doesn't reek of corruption, I don't know what does. And if you don't believe me, go look that one up. I mean, they literally said they were throwing gold bars off the Titanic. That's the verbiage that they used. And, these big changes coming to the EPA are really big. They're really big. And, the naysayers are going to go, oh my God, you want the planet to burn by getting rid of the EPA. As if the EPA is some magical superhero like Captain Planet and they can magically turn cities into mystical rainforests. Right, because that makes sense. Side note, who remembers the Captain Planet videos in school? I remember having to watch those as a kid in school. But anyway, let me know if you're watching on video. Comment below if you remember those. But, of course, I don't want the planet to be set on fire. Yes, I want to go for a hike in the mountains without getting rained on by acid. But if you think that the EPA can single-handedly save the planet, let me introduce you to China, Russia, literally everywhere in Africa, India, Pakistan, and so much more. Places that have industrial waste that is, truly toxic and horrible. Oh my gosh. And, the EPA has been a corrupt organization that launders taxpayer money into the pockets of unelected bureaucrats. And you really want these guys looking after the planet? Imagine all the ways that money could have actually been utilized to clean things up on the ground level, really clean up the true causes of pollution in our environment. And that goes back to this endangerment finding, which really falsely pinned carbon dioxide from automobiles on all of the problems in our world, right? Think of what if we actually took that money, say that $20 billion that they tried to put under the rug, right? What if that actually got put into projects on the ground level that really made a big difference instead of lining the pocketbooks of various bureaucrats? Or, hear me out, crazy idea, what if you just returned the money to the taxpayers? Because you're going to need that money to pay for all the, to offset the cost of how expensive cars have become because of these regulations. And they really have. The EPA has made things difficult for car manufacturers. People go, why are cars so expensive? Cars are more expensive now than they've ever been. And I'm not just saying because of inflation. Well, yeah, duh, it's more expensive in 2025 than 1975, right? Well, yeah, inflation. If you account for the inflation, cars are still more expensive than they have ever been. And are they really better? Are they really better? In some ways, performance has improved from 1975. In some ways, some harmful emissions have improved. But have cars really gotten better? Have they truly gotten better? And I think the answer is, I don't know. The answer is I don't know. And the answer might be more on the no, because, okay, well, they're more technologically advanced. They do this, they do that. Yeah, but does that actually make them better? Does that make them better at getting from point A to point B? Does that make them better at lasting a long time? Their cars do last longer now than they have before, but is it because of the environmental regulations? I don't think so. Ask any diesel owner who's had to fix EGR problem. EGRs are terrible, by the way. You're just literally taking your exhaust and shoving it back into the intake, choking that engine up on all this soot. It gets on the valves. It's really, EGRs are terrible. And don't get me started on the fact that Scania, a diesel engine manufacturer out of Europe, and granted, Europe has not been the shining beacon of decent emissions regulations. They're far worse there. But did you know that Scania has a diesel engine which runs so efficiently that it doesn't require an EGR, yet it makes modern power, modern reliability, and if anything, it's more reliable without that EGR. Yet they can't sell them here in the United States because of arbitrary regulations that just require an EGR. Anyway, Administrator Lee Zeldin has taken a step into the right direction. We need to see more of this. Will the earth burn? No, it's not. Will this provide an avenue for cars to come down in price? Maybe. Is the EPA going to stop coming after motorsports? I think that will be immediately actionable. We're going to talk about this and more, and maybe get to my Hertz rental car experience. That's all coming up right here on the Automotive ADHD Show after the break.
He's the nut behind the wheel and behind the mic. This is Automotive ADHD with Matt West.
Man, that rant on the EPA. Oh man, I gotta come down from that a bit. I gotta calm down just a little bit. I mean, that was a rant on proportions that would, I think, make Jim Miller proud. He is, if you listen to the radio out here, he's known for his rants, by the way. So, coming off of that, I want to discuss something a little bit lighter and something that may even be possible now, thanks to some of those loosening EPA regulations. I never thought we'd see the day that I would be talking about EPA regulations being loosened. I never thought that would happen. Credit to Lee Zeldin, not only for doing it, but for his transparency in doing it, his willingness to go out and talk with media about what is happening inside the EPA. I feel like that's a look we haven't had before into the EPA. And in a way, yes, he's the administrator of the EPA, but in another way, he's sort of the brand ambassador of the EPA now. And he's really getting out there. And I do appreciate that. And will this, people will say, oh, automakers aren't going to do electric cars. They're not going to do this and that. Yeah, because, they're going to reassess business-wise what makes sense now. They have been under the thumb of the government to do these things with EVs. Do people want EVs? Yeah, there's a demand for them now. EVs aren't going to go away, but maybe the way manufacturers are implementing these EVs is going to change. Maybe the scale at which they're going to do it. Need I remind you that, Ford loses money on the F-150 Lightning, and they're doing it because they had to in a way. Yes, they wanted a proof of concept. Yes, they wanted to get first to market on it, but now they're losing money on those things. Also, let's not talk about, well, I guess we are going to talk about it, how quickly those Lightnings depreciate. And I have a family member who has one, and it's a really nice truck to drive. Not going to lie. It's a really nice truck to drive. I actually enjoy it. It drives a lot smoother than most trucks. It handles better. It's sharper in its steering and the way it turns. It's got this low center of gravity, near 50-50 weight distribution with the battery pack in the middle. It doesn't drive like a truck, yet it still will pull 10,000 some-ish pounds. You won't get great range while you're towing that, but it'll do it. I like it. I like it. Yeah, I'm saying it here on the show. An EV that I like. Go figure. I also appreciate, way back when the Lightning came out, I was doing this show and I talked about how that is the one, if I were to buy one, that I would go for because it shares a lot of other body panels, fenders, doors, interior trim, window regulators, random stuff. The stuff that goes wrong in any car on a long enough timeline of ownership. The annoying little stuff is shared with the common F-150. Give it 10 years. Oh no, the window, I'll pick on window regulators. The window regulator in my Lightning went out. I'll just go down to the junkyard and go grab one out of a wrecked gas F-150. No problem. It'll cost you nothing. Try to do that with a Cybertruck. Try to do that with a Rivian. It's not going to happen. Not going to happen. The Lightning still has my vote. I think the Lightning does have a little bit of a problem when it comes to range still. I don't think they're not the leader in range, even with the new one, which is supposed to have better range. They've revised the battery pack. Tesla's killing them on the range. Rivian's killing them on the range. They got to fix that. Now, I won't go down that rabbit hole, but, manufacturers are going to make what the market's demanding, not what the government demands them to do. And we're going to see some interesting stuff with that. And you know what the market has been demanding? A V8 Jeep Gladiator. Oh, yeah. This is cool. This is very cool. In fact, this comes by way of Car and Driver. Hat tip there. And Andrew Wendler has the story here from Car and Driver. And the headline reads, Jeep Wrangler's V8 has no expiration date. Gladiator 392 coming too. Yeah. So Jeep is saying they're not going to get rid of the 392 Rubicon Wrangler, the four-door Wrangler. It's a 392 and a Wrangler is just scary. It is. I did enjoy my rental EV Wrangler. Well, not EV, sorry. Rental hybrid. I got EVs on the brain now. Hybrid 4xe Wrangler. You can listen to last week's show. I actually did the show from the Jeep while I was driving across the country, which is pretty exciting. It drove better on the road than any Jeep I have ever driven. And I've driven a lot of Jeeps. But still, stuffing a 392 into that. Oh, man, I don't know. But, it did have me thinking, well, the four-door Wrangler gets a 392. Why don't you get a 392 in the Gladiator? I thought that while I was driving, and then lo and behold, this comes out. It's almost like I willed it into existence. Come on, give us another S2000. Give us another S2000 Honda. Okay, never mind. That's not going to work. But anyway, 392, they're saying, is going to come to the Gladiator, and it makes sense. It's the same platform. Why would the truck one not have the 392 when the four-door Wrangler does have the 392? Anyway, I think that's interesting. I think that's very good that it is doing that. It gives us options. People have been saying, why doesn't the pickup truck Wrangler get a V8? You know, the Scrambler back in the day, the Jeep Scrambler, which was the original, it was a CJ7 based pickup truck. So much like how the Gladiator is the JL Wrangler based pickup truck. Sure, you had the, like the J10 like the actual original Gladiator namesake didn't share anything with the CJ7 necessarily. It was sharing stuff with things like the Grand Wagoneer, for example, or vice versa. I think the J10 came first, then the Grand Wagoneer. I digress. But, and I still really think that the Gladiator now should have been called the Scrambler because that would have made more sense historically. But you could have had a V8 in a Scrambler back in the day. And you should have one now. My only criticism of this is they're saying we're going to put the 392 in the Gladiator. All right, well, 392 Wranglers are already, I mean, they've been out for a while, but the markups are still heavy on them. They've been asking $100,000. Can you imagine dropping $100,000 on a Wrangler? Come on. And I think the same thing's going to happen here. So that's my only gripe is, yes, this will come out. Yes, will it only get in the hands of Instagram influencers and YouTubers? And they'll drive up the hype of it, and then the markups will continue, and these trucks will be over $100,000. $100,000 for a mid-sized truck, even with the 392, that's a no-go for me. Now, if Jeep came along and put one of the other Hemis in there, maybe a 5.7, for example, and that would be cool. A more affordable V8 Gladiator and price that a lot lower. I think that would be exceptional. Jeep, are you listening? You should do that. Fine, do the 392, charge $100,000, 392 Rubicon Gladiator, but give me a non-Rubicon one with a 5.7 all day. I mean, really, you can't beat that. So, and speaking of which, where's the 392 in like Ram's pickup trucks? That's still missing. Fix that. Supposedly that's supposed to be coming back. They're supposed to also bring the Hellcat powered TRX back. So all good stuff there. You might have noticed as well when I was on the road. So 2 weeks ago, I bashed on Hertz. I really bashed on them for AI scanners and all that stuff. And then through pure circumstance and chance, I wasn't planning on it. My flight got delayed 12 hours leaving a work thing in Washington, D.C. that I was doing. Then it got canceled after 12 hours. So I just said, screw it. I'm going to rent a car. I can drive back faster at this point. Was it technically faster? No. Did I have more fun? Yes. And I rented a car. Only thing is, only company with a vehicle that fit me and my cases of camera equipment was, for all my work stuff. They're big cases, like rack-mounted equipment cases. It's heavy-duty stuff. It was a Jeep Wrangler 4xe from Hertz. Yeah, so I talk bad. I'm smashing on Hertz, and then I have to rent a Hertz rental car. And actually, the rental car process, I did check out the AI scanners at the Reagan Airport that Sixt had, the other rental car company. I saw cars going in and out. I talked about that last week. I brought my Hertz rental back here. I drove from Washington, D.C., Reagan Airport, left there, all the way to Colorado Springs, and I dropped it off at the Colorado Springs Airport. No AI scanner at the Springs Airport, probably because it's a small airport technically, but I was able to drop it off there. Did Hertz arrest me? No, they have a habit of arresting customers. Did they do that? They did not. Did they hand me a bill after driving it through the non-existent AI scanner for $10 million for damage that I didn't cause that the AI scanner hallucinated? Also, no, surprisingly. And in case you were wondering, it cost me, I don't have my receipt handy, it was $742 and some change to drive from DC to Colorado Springs. And I ended up taking 3 days. On the last day, I took it a little slower. There's no need to rush. So yeah, I extended it a day, but there you go. Hertz did not rake me over the coals. They did not arrest me, and the AI didn't come for my money. That's a bombshell right there. And on that, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next week right here on the Automotive ADHD Show.